On this week's episode of the Steam Deck Podcast, we're talking about the ROG Ally 2, Xbox's Project Kennan, and what they might mean for Steam Deck 2. What's up, Internet? You're tuning to this week's episode of the Steam Deck Podcast, Slipscreen Games' weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Full steam ahead, boys.
Full steam ahead.
This thing looks like it's powered by Steam, that's for sure.
Oh my god. So I'm really excited because obviously we had a leak this week of the ROG Ally 2 and the Xbox offshoot of it, which we'll call Project Kennan for today. And man, between the three of us in our private Steam Deck podcast chat and then our Discord, we're just roasting this thing. It's like Xbox 360 ass looking device, Wii U prototype ass looking device, Mad Catz console.
It's Mad Catz, 100% it's Mad Catz. It's hideous. They took the ugliest thing I'd ever seen previously, which was the ROG Ally, and somehow made it even uglier. It's like, oh, PlayStation's being successful with the PlayStation Portal. Let's take that and we'll tack on these grips, and that'll do it.
It looks like if you were to put like a picture of, you know, that diagram of like the uterus and the what's it's the ovaries and that. If you put that on there, it would look like it's some sort of like medical like.
I'm sorry.
Device.
I gotta. Just a ringing indictment of the UK's education system for that one. Please continue.
I had to think of the word uterus for a second there because I would have said womb ideally. It's just got like a pelvic look to it, and like it's just I don't know. I don't get it.
To me, I think the thing that makes it look the funkiest is that it has the controller grips on the sides. Like it makes it look like it is a regular handheld with one of those like third party, you know.
Oh yeah, but you know what? Maybe this makes it comfortable because there's another picture that 91 Mobiles had posted, and it's a side profile picture, and holy shit, is this thing a chonk. It is so thick in comparison to even the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, the Switch, like anything. Nothing compares to this. It looks ridiculously
But
thick.
the body is already thick, and then when you add on the controller grips, which then poke out further from the back, it's even thicker.
Its footprint is nuts, is the thing. Yeah, because you're right. Like it's a beefy guy, but like when you toss those on the back, and the fact that they're not like, because again, right, with the Steam Deck, like the Steam Deck is big, but because you have that kind of like, you know, the ergonomic like side holding, right? Like it's like it still feels like one piece, and it's not like it has this. I mean, I guess it does make a similar footprint on the sides because those do like.
But it's not as thick.
But it's not like this.
Yeah, this is like you are holding onto it, and it almost makes you feel like if you're supposed to have your fingers wrapped around those to hold them, you then have to then like somehow reach those buttons.
The buttons on the interior, like
they look further in because if you're not holding it
like you'd nudge those with your knuckles, or like you maybe bring your finger. I
think you're gonna
gorilla hands. Jesus, I've got some of us have dainty little fingers that don't hit things like that. Maybe if you're gonna be.
Steve has dainty little fingers. He can't do that.
Oh,
tiny hands.
Look at us.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, so part of me wonders, because when you're looking at the photos we have, right, there's 3 different shots of it. There's like a gray translucent one. There's the like white, more like Xbox 360 style layout, and then there's like a beige one that looks like a.
I think that's white. I think it's.
Yeah, you think that's the white one under? Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I think it's 2 devices, and I think what you're seeing as translucent and grey is actually just black and gross. Like it looks like it's
you think that's all fingerprints?
Opaque. Okay. I think it's just like it's either fingerprints or it's like a prototype in the fact that it's like not the final finish to it. So
this was going to be my question: was do you guys think this is the final version of this, or is this a prototype?
This is one that's gone in for FCC validation. So it's going in. It needs to be everything inside, and the appearance needs to match what the final device is going to look like, which is what this is. But the molding and the plastic is probably prototype. My guess would be the plastic is going to look a little bit more like the Steam Decks, is a little bit more matte, because this looks very shiny, very glossy. It sort of
Like a
looks
slight
3D
texture
printed,
to it.
and then it's been sanded down. Like if you look at the black model around the Xbox button, which we'll talk about, and the D-pad, it sort of looks like it's been sanded a little bit to me.
It makes it look antiquated in that way. I think that's part of why we're getting that read of like it feels.
It looks cheap. It looks cheap.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think just generally like the matte texture is like what's expected.
The white
now.
one looks a lot more closer to production to my eye.
It's glossier.
I would say it is glossy, but it's not super shiny. It doesn't look like worn down plastic like the black one does.
No, I think that actually looks like a consumer product.
Yeah. Also, the back of the white one has like the sort of the RGB. It has like the extra little bits on it that I think make it look more like a finished product. I wonder if the black one's maybe going to launch later, and that's why it looks a little bit less finished.
You think maybe it's like there's two SKUs, you know,
It could do. It could
Maybe,
do. I
yeah.
mean, it seems like they're both Xbox themed, but the button for the Xbox has been removed from the white model. Like the logo's been hidden.
I'm pretty sure the ROG Ally already has the colourful buttons, doesn't it?
It does, but they're slightly different colors.
yeah,
they're
are
not.
different
They're not the
colours.
same. So
That
I'm
is
pretty sure the
Xbox
white
themed.
one is Xbox themed. It is going to be an Xbox model, and the black one you can see where the Xbox button would be positioned. It's on the left-hand side.
It's funny because the
Yeah.
white one looks more Xboxy, but like that's the one that doesn't have the Xbox button on it.
Yeah. Now you mention it, there is like what looks to be like a sticker over it.
I think there's a sticker over the top of it, and it's going to be an actual Xbox button, a white
And
button
maybe
there.
the black one is supposed to be, yes, maybe the ROG Ally 2 is just Project Kennan.
That's my guess. That the project probably is we're going to integrate a lot more with these devices.
Oh, so what we're probably looking at here then is ROG Ally 2 and ROG Ally X2.
Yes, that would be my guess. Yeah.
Right. Cool. I'm glad you've said that because now the notes are wrong. Looking at pictures of the ROG Ally, the standard edition, is a way nicer looking device. Like I didn't quite, I guess, realize just how much worse this looks. Granted, I don't like the ROG Ally very much, but this does look so much worse than
The
the
device
ROG Ally.
Steve called the ugliest console he's ever seen.
Yeah.
Not 6
I
minutes
don't mind
ago.
that so much. I don't mind that so much.
Part of it is I fucking hate all the gamer bro bullshit. And sorry if that's your aesthetic. Fair enough. More power to you. I can't stand the stupid looking eye thing on the back and the horrible angles and the RGB strips. That's just not my style. I'd rather have something in the same way that I think the PlayStation 5 is absolutely disgusting. And I like the plain black box that is my Xbox. So like everyone has a different aesthetic. Mine is not the ROG Ally.
All of the RGB came out of my computer in the last year, and I've since replaced it with just like cheaper, quieter, and cooler stuff that has no RGB. And I'm like, why did I not just do this in the first place? Why was I like, this looks nicer? Then
like-
it sits under the desk.
You like your little lights.
Yeah, but they do make it go faster, to be fair.
Yeah, it's like if you paint flames on the side of it.
But all of my friends, or a few of my friends that I've said, you know, oh, you should get the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck's great, and they've gone, oh, actually, I got the ROG Ally instead because it's better. I hope that they look at this new ROG Ally 2 and realize that they're on the worst path. That they've made the wrong decision, and if they now have to stick with this, they have to hold that thing.
It's so funny to me.
Like-
I'm sorry. Hold on. I think it's so funny that like every time we talk about another like any competitor to the Steam Deck, like every time we have this very like kind of objective, like let's compare the stats, and you know, yeah, I really feel like ultimately the Steam Deck just has these advantages that these other devices don't have, and I don't know why you'd pick. And now, like, I feel like we've gone like we're here like fuck ROG Ally. And if you're an ROG Ally gamer, you're a tool, man.
If we're gonna spend an entire episode talking about something that isn't the Steam Deck, I'm gonna back the Steam Deck in another way. We're gonna.
I'm here for it.
To
I'm here for
get their time worth out of this.
See, I thought you were going down they're on a terrible path because we're getting yet another upgrade on what was previously a minor upgrade last year with the ROG Ally X. We're now getting the number 2, and this is the same thing that we spoke about previously with like, you know, the Aya Neos, the Lenovo Legions. There's always going to be a new one around the corner. They're not going to be supporting it long term in the same way that Valve's been doing with the Steam Deck. Having said that, when we dig into the specs on this, I think it's apparent that there may be another Steam Deck coming around the corner.
Yes. Before we get onto the specs, we've roasted the design a lot. Let's quickly give some context as to what the Black Xbox edition is supposed to be. Because if you didn't listen a couple of weeks ago, I think it might have been Pete and I spoke about Project Kennan, which was I think it was Jeff Corden. Jez Corden, who originally sort of did a story about this, calling it Project Kenan, and then Tom Warren from Eurogamer, I think. Oh, God, I'm not doing a good job here. Backs that claim up, but also had some corrections to say that, as Asus are meant to be working on an Xbox branded handheld, but it won't be the Xbox handheld that was spoke about last year.
Tom Warren's at The Verge.
The Verge, sorry.
That was going to bother me. I figured there's somebody else in the audience who's scratching their brain, so there we go.
Thank you very much for helping out with that. He also said that Xbox VP Jason Ronald had said that they were going to wanting to combine the best of Xbox and Windows, which we took to mean we're getting that slimmed down mobile console-friendly version of Windows that sort of integrates Xbox Game Bar and stuff. He also said that that's going to happen later. We'd see the beginnings of that later in 2025, which is going to line up nicely with this coming out. So it seems like what I had theorized before we had that conversation is that the Black Edition with the Xbox logo was going to be this Project Kennan version of the ROG Ally 2, and then we were going to just have a standard one. But maybe both of them therefore benefit from this new version of Windows that's going to be, sort of what people wanted. And one of the reasons that I don't appreciate a lot of these handhelds coming out is, while you can play Game Pass on them, and that's great, you have to use Windows with a controller. It's not quite as nice as it could be.
Yeah, that's was kind of the big thing that we ended up talking about in that episode, was kind of like, what are the two versions of this device, and like, how do they coexist? Like, are they very, very similar, but there are maybe different, like technical specs, right? Because like the Xbox One is targeting like this Series X benchmarks, and maybe like an ROG 2 proper could be like more targeting higher end PC specs, or is it going to be like the ROG Ally 2 is more of a, still a Windows PC centric machine, whereas the Xbox One is supposed to be more of a console system, and maybe we'll use the Xbox OS or whatever. That's still a big question of mine, is like, what are these two devices in relation to one another? Are they like literally just two separate devices that exist for two separate markets? Or is it going to be similar to, like, if I was like, oh, I'm going to buy a Steam Deck, right? So do I want the LCD model or the OLED model, right?
It could be that one of them is the Xbox model, which I can't see it being the black one and the white one's not, because of the buttons and the theming and the look of it. But it could be that one's a SteamOS version, in the same way we saw with the Lenovo Legion Go S. It might be that finally we get an official SteamOS version. We know Valve is putting out their beta of SteamOS with support for the ROG Ally, specifically targeting that device before any other device. Right. That's the one that they're hitting at.
But the Legion Go got it first, right?
The Lenovo Legion Go S has it, but there's no installer yet for SteamOS, so you can't download it. The beta's not yet released. They're saying sometime in May is when it was due out.
Yeah, I guess you could have one of them be the Xbox branded model, and that's still Windows, and it is enhanced by Xbox.
That's my guess. I can't see that this slimmed down version of Windows is going to be anything more than them improving the Xbox app, and the Xbox button opens up the Xbox app, and you can navigate that with it, but it's still going to be Windows at heart. Yeah, it's still going to be horrible.
I imagine it could be pretty similar to. Do you guys remember back in? I want to say it was Windows 10, maybe. It was the one where, like, when they first started doing the like touchscreen laptops, and they had that
Windows 8.
8, yeah, thank you. And
Metro
it had that like
tiles.
There was the basically like you could toggle that on or off, where it was like it was basically just like a GUI layer that would make it more,
which
visual.
Really is basically what SteamOS is. It's either you're in game mode and it's that GUI layer, or you can go into desktop mode, which is PC mode.
The idea that they could rip that off and do a version of that which to your point, Steve, is basically just like, like the Xbox button opens the Xbox app and you can navigate through menus and stuff more cleanly with a controller, right? Like,
that'd be brilliant. It's what people have been asking for. It saves all of these OEMs having to make their own. We won't have to use
Yeah.
Armory Crate anymore, or any of that crap, in order to be able to access any of this stuff, because it'll be within the Xbox app itself. I hope that's what they do with Windows, and that's the route they go. But I would love to see an official version of the ROG Ally 2 with SteamOS.
So, just to jump back quickly, if I press the Xbox button now on this, it is currently configured to open up Steam, right? If I press it again, it then immediately opens Steam Big Picture mode, right? That's like a very quick shortcut for me to get into Big Picture mode with this. However, if I was to go into Game Bar and toggle Game Bar back on, and I pressed this button, I pressed it accidentally, Game Bar would open in its place. So all you really need to do, and I think Game Bar and Game DVR was brought up in this original discussion, what it seems like it could be is that you just, instead of Game Bar being the overlay that it is now, which is overlays over the games, there's a few tiles, you can see your Xbox friends list, you can record, blah, blah, blah. That is, maybe if that's more of like a Steam Big Picture mode thing, where it is more of a portal into your Xbox games, you don't really need to change much functionality. You just still have it. You press the button, and then this game mode opens. And then if you want to back out of that and still be in your desktop mode, exactly like the Steam Deck, you can. That seems like very possible. If they've got a specific Xbox button on there that's going to behave the exact same way as this one does, then I can see that working quite fine. Quite fine.
I think that's a good way to do it. Just give people options. But I do hope the default is it boots up in that mode, because I think that's one of the biggest problems at the moment, is you can configure it to open up Steam Big Picture mode, and there's a way to do that on boot, but it's still got to go through Windows. You've got to get past through the Windows Hello screen, and then everything else loads in, and then Steam opens, and then it finally opens Big Picture mode. And when you go into sleep and come back out of sleep, it sometimes has to do the same thing, because it's gone into like hibernation mode. It's just not a premium experience. And I do hope that this Project Kennan really is the software side of it, and less about we want to have our own device with an Xbox button on, because I think that kind of misses the point. I think it needs to be more than that. It needs a little bit of deeper integration, and they really need to focus on Windows being a better competitor to SteamOS, because I do feel like SteamOS is really kind of at the forefront of what users are expecting from a handheld PC.
Yeah, I think SteamOS is what a lot of people there's a lot of interest in Linux gaming at the moment, being helped out by the Steam Deck, but also some of the things Windows are doing, like forcing accounts. I set up a laptop today that I had to log in with my account. I then had to make the effort to go and unsync a bunch of my personal stuff from what is a work laptop, and that was frustrating to me. And I don't see that they're taking away options for you to be able to get around that stuff. You sort of have to engage in the adverts and all the things that you have to engage in with Windows, let alone having to buy the license or have the license added as part of your the hardware you're buying. So I can see, I am tempted. I keep getting tempted by why don't I just try a Linux distro that's not necessarily SteamOS because it's not available, but something similar to it. Maybe not Bazzite because I want to use it on like a desktop PC. Who knows? But then my big thing that stopped me was the fact that I use this for Game Pass and I stream games from this for Games Pass. So I think people would be interested in Linux if it was as fully featured as Windows.
I think that's the big pull to Windows at the moment is the games you can't play on SteamOS. The ones that use something like BattlEye anti-cheat, like the Destiny 2s of the world, and Game Pass. Like Game Pass, Pete has demonstrated. If you've not been listening to the Daily Checkpoint, he's been talking all about the fact that that's all he's playing this year. That's where all the games have been. It's really is turning out to be a really good deal this year. We've had games that we've spoken about on the show. Blueprints last week. That's on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Oblivion, Expedition 33. Like there's so many big games on Game Pass, and there's going to be more to come. And being able to play them, I can't lie, would be a big draw for me to go to a device that runs Windows. I tried running Windows on Steam Deck before. Just having to dual boot or boot from a separate device is just not great at the moment. Yeah. And I hope to see when we get the SteamOS installer, they're promising that official dual boot support is going to come along with that. Maybe that's the time I bite the bullet and install Windows on my Steam Deck, because I don't think I want the Mad Catz PC. I can't lie, it's not for me.
No.
Maybe there'll be another device that is for me, but this ain't it.
No. Should we talk specs then? Oh, go on. No, go on.
Before we get on specs, I am interested just in that talking point real quick there, which is that like you're that turned off by the aesthetic that you wouldn't buy it if it had functionality you were interested in?
Yeah, because you know that there's going to be this same chip that's just an off-the-shelf AMD part in another device that probably would suit my aesthetic. Something from Ioneo, for example. They
Sure.
make beautiful devices. Maybe a Lenovo device. Who knows? Maybe we get something from like Alienware or another vendor pops in. There was rumors that HP was meant to be working on something like the Omen machines.
I think the only thing for me that like really feels like could be an X factor for whether or not this is like a device that I would actually be interested in, I think has a lot more to do with its like Xbox functionality than its PC functionality. Like if all of my Xbox library, for example, was like playable on this device, it's like that's a little more attractive.
See happening.
But I don't think so either.
No, I think it's just going to be this is a nicer UI, and I think that comes to Windows in general. It's probably, if they're looking at the back half, it's probably in the H2 update for 2025 on Windows.
It seems really weird to me to have an Xbox branded console and to be able to log into it and not have access to your Xbox.
It's not Xbox branded though. Like if this didn't say ROG on the front and it said Xbox, I'd be all with you. But the fact is ROG, yeah, it's got an Xbox button, but so did the Logitech Cloud device,
G Cloud, yeah,
G Cloud thing. And I had an Xbox button, but really didn't do anything. It wasn't that great of a device, and you could play on other platforms. It just happened to have an Xbox button on it. Yeah, it's like having a Netflix button on your TV remote.
What about Jason Ronald, who said that they're going to combine the best of Xbox and Windows, Steve?
Well, he's not going to be talking to the shareholders and going, yeah, we're going to do the shitty bits of Windows and the shitty bits of Xbox, and we'll put them together, and it'll be a slight okay implementation.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you that I think it's going to feel more like a ROG Ally with an Xbox button than it is going to be an Xbox handheld. Yeah, which I think
is what it was supposed to be, right? That was what this one. That's what this one is meant to be. This isn't the big Xbox one they announced last year. This is that, right? Just to kind of quickly jump back to you saying you would get this or you'd be interested in this if you opened up if all of your Xbox games, your Xbox library carried over. Is that not what Play Anywhere means? You have that as long as it's on the Windows Store and it's on the Xbox. In theory, owning it on one means you own it on both, right? Maybe. I'm pretty sure that's what Play Anywhere even before Game Pass was like
that is correct. Okay. However, a lot of the games aren't available on Play Anywhere, or they weren't ever ported to PC, so they might not be available there. There are a lot of
so it has to be on both.
Yeah.
For that, okay, I gotcha.
All right, fine. That makes sense.
Because I wasn't sure. Which I illustrates the problem.
There's 1,241 Play Anywhere games, which is less than I thought. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
I think it's a lot of Xbox only stuff or Game Pass stuff.
They did add a lot more recently. I can't remember when it was. It was a few weeks back. They added I think they said 900 more games available on the Xbox Store or something like that. So that I think the numbers probably. I think it probably is increased to just over 1,000 now, but it wasn't many at all before. But yeah, I agree. I don't think this is the Xbox handheld we've been waiting for. This feels like. Do you remember when Apple did that iTunes phone with Motorola, and then a year later they released the iPhone, and it's like, we're waiting for the iPhone and we're getting the iTunes phone right now, and that's really what this seems like to me.
This is the first time I've ever heard of this.
It was the Motorola Rocker, and it was
yeah.
You could only put 50 songs on it from iTunes, and it was limited, and it was so crap, and no one wanted it. And then the iPhone came out, and 2 years later, and everyone wanted one of those instead.
It's funny that it's an iTunes phone, not an iPod phone.
Yeah. They wouldn't let me use the iPod name.
Yeah.
Too valuable. All right, so we're going to talk about specs in a second here, but before that, let me give you a word from our sponsors. This episode was made with support from listeners like you on patreon.com/flipscreengames. If you enjoy our podcast, supporting us on Patreon will help us spend more time making content and get you access to Patreon exclusive perks like early access to ad-free versions of all of our podcasts, and exclusive content like the twice monthly After Dark podcast, where Steve and I will share funny personal stories, play games with each other, and more. And my daily Patreon show, The Daily Checkpoint, where every day I'll spend at least 10 minutes answering your questions or sharing my off-the-cuff thoughts on what I'm playing and what's going on in the video games industry. If you like what we do and want to go above and beyond to show your support, head over to patreon.com/flipscreengames today. And we're back. Talk to me about specs, Steve.
Max, I think, is probably the man to talk to you about that. He knows
The
this
look,
more than me.
the look of
It was like a
utter
deer in headlights.
satisfaction on Max's face.
No, that was a look of fear because I was about to kick back. I would have actually passed this to Steve as well, personally. But it's fine. We've got
See,
this.
I thought
wrote
you
this
were
down.
like, oh, called off the bench. Look at me,
It's nice.
big dog.
It's nice considering Steve is Steve's the go-to, and we regularly talk about how without Steve the podcast is useless. So here we go. So the Black Edition is clearly much higher spec. It has the Ryzen Z2 Extreme, which has 8 cores and 36 watts TDP. The Ryzen Z1 Extreme is in the current ROG Ally X from memory. So this is sort of similar to, this is like the next gen version of that chip. This is also going to have 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is a lot. That is your standard like PC RAM. You're not limited by RAM at all there. The white model.
How many gigs are in the deck? It's 8, right?
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah.
No, I think it's 16, isn't it?
Oh, we have
But
16.
it's shared, 16, but shared, right?
Yes, it is. It is shared, but that's going to be the same case here. That
Good
it's
point.
also
Yeah,
shared.
36 shared. So the white model, which is the what we now think is just the standard ROG Ally 2, whatever. Oh my god, get my words out. ROG Ally 2 has an AMD Aerith Plus chip, which is a successor to Van Gogh, which is the APU that's in the Steam Deck, and that has only 4 cores and has a 20 watt TDP and 16 gigabytes of RAM. So it's more than it's like a slightly beefier Steam Deck. Now, Steve, earlier you said something about the specs related, like giving you some sort of idea about the Steam Deck, right?
Yeah, see, I like the fact that we're now seeing that custom chip that Valve worked with AMD on getting kind of a next generation, because we'd heard previously from Valve that they weren't going to do another Steam Deck until there was like a generational leap or a next generation that they could do with this TDP, because that for them has been the sweet spot. And I tend to agree. Something like the ROG Ally, you can kind of brute force your way into getting better performance because you are basically rinsing through your battery, and that's what the Z2 Extreme is going to allow you to do. This was announced. The Z2 Extreme was announced, I think, back in February, 4 months, maybe January. It was at CES. It was announced at CES in January. They announced the Z2, the Z2 Go, and the Z2 Extreme. We've seen the Z2, I think, in the Lenovo Legion Go. The new one, not the Go S, that's got the Z2 Go in it. And the Z2 Extreme can push all the way up to 35 watts. My guess would be they're going to try and hone this in to work nicely around 20 watts GDP, but go between the 15 and the 30. Maybe have a boost mode. But
the current ROG Ally, you can put like a 100-watt charger into it and then just like max that out.
Yeah,
right?
you can. Yeah, and also because this has 2 USB-C ports on the top. I don't know if you noticed in the photos. I'd imagine
right here,
similar to the ROG Ally X, it's going to be Thunderbolt or USB 4.
Yes, I would imagine so, which is way better than the adapter you need for
so you can
first gen ROG Ally.
Shove an external GPU in there as well with the 32 gigs of RAM. That means the CPU has 32 gigs, and it can then offload to the external GPU and use that memory just for graphics.
Yeah,
this could be the ROG Ally 2 or X2. I think it's going to be the X2, because if you look at the code name, the RC73X1, it could be Xbox. My guess is it's the Extreme version, the X, because they did multiple versions for even the first ROG Ally. You could get one with the Z1 or the Z1 Extreme.
I remember that.
So I would imagine they do something similar here. You either get the AMD Aerith chip, whatever they call that, or you get the Z2 Extreme version. It's interesting. Like, is this going to be the point now where Valve needs to respond? Because if there are devices that can eke out better performance with the same battery life as a Steam Deck, that's really where I think I'm now hoping that we get another Steam Deck, especially something, if this can run, say, the latest and greatest games. It doesn't even have to run them very well, but like Expedition 33, Oblivion, some of the biggest games of this year, if the ROG Ally 2 can run them and the Steam Deck can't, that starts to look bad. And I feel like that's when, Valve needs to respond. And if there's a chip available off the shelf for all of these other OEMs, Valve should be able to pull their weight and work with AMD to hone that in even more in the same way they did with the Steam Deck and potentially get something special.
We have had some sort of release every year since the Steam Deck came out, right? We had in 2023 we had 2022 Steam Deck came out. 2023 we had the OLED. 2024 we had the white edition. Well, that's not necessarily a new thing. It was a release, right? It was something to give it a little kickstart. This year, if they're going to do anything, I feel like something like you're saying, just a boost, something that brings it back up, refreshes it, ends the conversation that's been happening at the moment of, is the Steam Deck not powerful enough? Are we sort of lagging behind now? The whole, is this going to be good enough for AAA games anymore? If that conversation can not go away entirely, because it's always going to be there with the power of these things. If that can at least be mitigated and that conversation becomes, again, which handheld do you want? If you want power, are you going to get the Steam Deck 2 or are you going to get the ROG Ally 2? If that's a really obvious answer of just, obviously get the ROG Ally 2, even if it's the same price. If the ROG Ally 2 is going to be the same price and then the Ally X is going to be $800 or whatever, like the current ROG Ally X is, then the obvious choice there for the competition is the standard one. And if the Steam Deck is that much weaker, then it's not it's an obvious choice there to me, even as someone who loves the Steam Deck.
Yeah, I mean, I think not only the response angle that you're discussing, I think makes sense. There hits a point where it's okay, our biggest competitor, right, has upped the ante. It makes sense to want to respond to that. But I think it also, it ties back to that comment we heard from them that you referenced earlier, Steve, of just them wanting to wait until there's a reasonable generational shift, right? They want it to feel like a substantial upgrade. And I think the specs that we're looking at in the Xbox edition here do represent that, right? The Z2 Extreme, with the 8 cores, 36 watts, 32, that's twice as much in basically every major category, right? So it's that is a significant upgrade, and that would really raise the ceiling on what kinds of games can be played. And I think that would probably represent, the type of generational leap that they're maybe thinking of. Maybe to your point, we don't see them respond right away because they want to up the ante even further and represent something that will be, an even further escalation of the
yeah. I think it's going to be price that stops them. Max said that the ROG Ally X is $800.
Right.
That is an expensive device, and Valve worked hard to get it to the price point that they were. Gabe even spoke about how it was painful to get to the original price point that they had, but that was in a time period where the best-selling handheld console wasn't $500. That's changed now.
Right.
The landscape has shifted, and I think the Switch 2 has opened doors for them to go, we can set the base prices $500 or $550 or even $600 because we know that people want to play their Steam library on the go. We've proven the device, and we can keep the old Steam Deck SKU around. Keep the OLED model, get rid of the LCD model finally, reduce the price of that one, and bring in a new SKU. Maybe that's a Steam Deck X, maybe that's a Steam Deck Pro, or maybe it is a Steam Deck 2 and they just go with the moniker of a Steam Deck 2. But I think it's getting to the point where it's time, whether that's this year or early next year. I think we're going to see them probably announce something. I don't know when it will drop, but I think if more and more devices like this are coming out, and the Z2 series of chips was announced in January, we're probably going to get the Z3 series of chips announced next year. And I'd imagine it's only going to be even more of a leap from there.
Annual releases of things like this is where I start to get a bit. We've spoken about this before about how the Steam Deck feels like a safe buy, has always felt like a safe buy. We're not going to be a year down the line, it's outdated. When you have annual refreshes for things like with PC parts, I'll just take that bit out and put that bit in and blah, blah, blah. When it's an entire device, that's when I get a bit like, oh, if you're doing annual new chips, annual new devices, I'm always going to feel like I'm on the
Yeah, I mean,
on the back foot.
that's been the problem, I think, with most of the OEMs, because they feel like they have to put out a new device every year, which makes sense because that's their business, them making hardware, whereas Valve's a bit different.
I think part of me wonders if like that's a mindset thing that we can train people to think differently about, because like consoles are kind of the only piece of hardware where you have that expectation, right? Where you're like, I'm going to buy this and this will be the only one of this that I have and use for 8 years until they put out another one, right? It's like, that's not how anything else works, right? Like there's a new phone model every year. There's a new iPad every year. There's a, new television every year. I don't buy a new television every year, right? Like you buy one when the one that you have stops meeting your needs. And I think the idea that, maybe that is like that cadence makes more sense for the handheld PC market because like of the way that PC specs are constantly evolving, and that like, there probably are like here's a great piece of anecdotal evidence, right? I think of my friend Laura, who's a Steam Deck user, right? And like has zero interest in playing modern AAA video games on their Steam Deck, right? So it's like, like we might be here like, yeah, sure is time for a new Steam Deck, huh? But it's like, that's not been her experience, right? Like, she's playing all the, big indie games that come out of the year on Steam Deck. And like, that's what she uses it for. And the number of games that, like they've gone to boot up and haven't worked, it's like none. It's like that's not been the experience, right? And I think the idea that, like this is a conversation that like I had with Ken not that long ago on Nintendo Noise of like, he's like, he works for a mobile phone carrier, right? So like he upgrades his phone every 3 years, right? It's like, I don't upgrade my phone every 3 years. I upgrade my phone when my screen breaks, right? Because like I don't give a fuck. I don't need more power for what I use that device for, right? In the same way that we've talked about how like there are people that are late adopters to every console generation, and they're not sitting there being like, oh no, I don't have the cutting edge thing. It's like, it's meeting my needs. I'm playing whatever thing I wanted to play on it. And I think that could be a cadence that makes more sense for these devices. Maybe not for Steam Deck because they want to maybe have more stable generational, jumps like that. But like the idea that, that like there could be a new Ally every year, but it's not maybe worth it to upgrade every year, right? But like every year is the year that someone jumps on, right? So like if there was, say, to your point, right, there's been a new Steam Deck every year, if they upgraded the quality every year, I think for us, we would be like, I feel kind of burned by that, right? Because like I was an early adopter.
It depends though. Like if I can sell my device like I did with my Steam Deck and upgrade it every single year, then I've got no problem with that. Like, am I getting mileage out of it where, I sell it and I lose 150 quid? Well, I've played it most days. So, it's cost me like what, 30p a day to play it. I'm like, I see it as I'm renting the device for 30p a day and then I move on to the next one.
And I think that's like, I guess ultimately the crossroads that like Valve and I guess the wider like handheld PC community needs to kind of like grapple with is like, do we want the option of more frequent upgrades so that when a game like Expedition or Oblivion or whatever comes out and my version doesn't work with it, there is a version I can upgrade to when the game I want doesn't play on my version, maybe. But then I think you also get into this like really annoying marketing problem that like if I was Valve, I wouldn't want to open Pandora's box there, which is that then every time you want to play, does X game run on Steam Deck? Well, which one do you have? And what are the specs? And there's different specs every fucking year. It's like, that's annoying. And like, no, like I think the average player doesn't want to contend with that, right? And if they are like that dialed into specs, like they're probably playing on a desktop, right? Like that's
I think I broadly agree with you. I don't think there's a need for Valve to go annual, but I don't think the rest of the market's going to slow down. This is proven to be a very lucrative idiom in terms of handheld PCs, and people want it, and Xbox has clearly seen that, and they're jumping on it with ROG here. We know that PlayStation's potentially developing a handheld. There's obviously the Switch 2. It seems like handheld's hot again. It was hot back when the PS Vita died, and now it's back and everyone wants a handheld again.
What time to be alive?
Yeah, it's a funny one, and I think it's one of the things that's worth keeping in mind. Like, this is a conversation we have a lot, with amongst ourselves or with folks in the audience and stuff like that, about like conventional wisdom and like, the way that we like think about, well, this is how things work. And it's like, yeah, well, we were all very like there was a lot of prognostication about how handheld was a dead form factor, and Nintendo kept it alive because people want Nintendo products so bad, not because people care about handhelds, and mobile was going to replace it, and iPads, and it's like, lo and behold, right? Like, you never really know how stuff's going to happen. All it takes is somebody like Valve with a creative vision to shake it up again.
It's gonna be interesting to see. A competition, I think, is always healthy. It's always good. I think I'm going to be interested to see what the ROG Ally is capable of. Who knows when we see it? It could be coming at Computex at the end of May, May 29th. Maybe they reserve this for the Xbox version. Maybe that's an Xbox showcase thing in June. That's like, it's like 7 days later. I think the showcase is on the 6th. So
depends how
Xboxy
this is, I guess. Depends if this is like, this is Xbox, or if this is Windows,
But they might want to showcase the, this is an Xbox campaign, and like now we've got the new Xbox experience on PC, and you can use it with the ROG Ally 2, and it's got the dedicated Xbox button, and we're going to be working with more vendors to bring this. I could see them doing a narrative around that at the Xbox showcase. But they might just want to focus on the games. So maybe they get this out ahead, and we have like a little bit, they always do the stuff afterwards, like the Xbox Showcase Extended, or like some interviews that, we'll see, Jeff Keighley doing stuff or whatever. Potentially that there's something there and they show it off. But it could come in Computex. That probably would be a good time for Asus to reveal at least the non-Xbox branded version.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what impact these devices ultimately end up having. I feel like obviously the Ally has been kind of the competitor to the Steam Deck, at least in my mind, right? Like I don't feel like any of the other devices have really made the same footprint. Like, I actually, to Max's point, like, I know people that have an Ally. I don't know a single person that has a Lenovo Legion Go, aside from like, like somebody like Bob Wolf, right, who like reviewed it, but it's like, I don't know a person that uses that as their primary gaming handheld, and I know a lot of motherfuckers that have handheld PCs. Anecdotal, but point being, like, I think if anybody is going to lay the gauntlet down at, like, here's the next more powerful device, and, like, it could actually have some kind of, make some kind of wave, I do think it is, the Ally, and obviously, like, the Xbox, integration there, like, it really remains to be seen what that actually means, and how it actually, like, if that moves units or not. Obviously, Xbox hardware is not in a particularly hot place right now. So I don't know. It'll be interesting, because it's like the price point is something I could see really being, a turnoff.
But that could be where, the Xbox branded one or the Xbox model subsidizes it, and it locks you into buying on the Xbox store, or shoving the Xbox store down your throat, or you buy it with a Game Pass subscription and you get it at a slightly discounted price. There's things they can do with it, I think, to mitigate that. But also, I think people maybe just need to accept the fact that the cost of their devices is going to keep going up and up and up. And we saw that sticker shock, the initial sticker shock with the Switch 2, but didn't seem to put anyone off buying one. They pretty much sold out across the board in America when the pre-orders went up.
Yeah, I think the question I'm having there, though, is like, is there an appetite for middle tier devices like that, right? Because, like, granted, you know, there was a reaction, right, that the Switch 2 was too expensive, but $500 is also fairly standard, right? Like, if you made the decision agnostic of platform that, like, I want to buy a device to play a video game on, right? Like, regularly, I want to get into video games. Your most affordable option would be something that was in the neighborhood of $500, right?
I mean, how much is a Series S these days? Isn't that still like 300?
Maybe, yeah. Fair enough.
They go on like Black Friday, like 250. I'm pretty sure, something like that.
Yeah, but like, take that out of the equation, right? We're talking standard.
Yeah, if you're looking at the the flagship consoles, they're all
for
about
each of them, right? They're roughly $500, and we talked a couple weeks ago, right? Max brought the topic to the table about how, like, PC parts are really, really expensive right now, and that the overall cost of building a gaming PC is higher. But even if we just, like, operate under the assumption that, like, say you could build a gaming rig that can play modern AAA, games for, like, in the neighborhood of, like, say $1,200, right? I think it becomes an interesting question of, like, where does an $800 niche device that doesn't play high-end games, and, it's like I think that felt easier to swallow when it was like, oh, like, yeah, like, the Steam Deck is analogous in price to other consoles, right? And you're like, I'm paying for it being this unique device that has all this cool functionality, whereas, like, the idea of being like, well, I'll spend twice as much for a thing that's more powerful, but still not really as powerful to play all the things I want to play on it in high quality. It's like, not to say that there is no market for it, but again, it's always the question for me of, like, how many people exist in that Venn diagram, and is it enough to make that OEM happy, right? Because, like, there are plenty of devices that we've talked about on this or other podcasts that come out, and people are like, who the fuck is this for? And there is a market, and then it's a niche, like the like the PlayStation Portal, for example, right? Was a thing where Sony was like, it exceeded our expectations, because it seems like their expectations were low, which is fine, right? If you have low expectations, then it doesn't, it has a low bar.
That was coming off the back of the PSVR 2, so maybe their expectations were really, really low. They're like, we just want to sell something, please buy an accessory.
So, like, who's to say, right? But, like, if you take what they say at face value, that device, which seemed like it was for no one, right, on its face to many people, was for someone, and they were happy selling that limited amount to that limited amount of people. Maybe ROG is in the same situation, right? Like, maybe that's fine, where it's like it doesn't need to sell millions and millions of copies. If it breaks a million, if it breaks 2 million, we're happy, and we're waiting for we're already in R&D on the sequel, right? And that'll sell another 2 million.
With ROG, it's probably also a companion device to a PC where you might have an ROG GPU in there, or you might use an ROG cooler, or you might use an ROG motherboard. So, like, they lock you in with the ROG brand. You make that synonymous with, oh, that's a device I liked. And then when you get around to
quality,
you get around to coming into wanting to build your own PC, you think about them and you go, yeah, I know them.
That's fair. I mean, I was not familiar with ROG as a manufacturer prior to the Ally, so maybe that's a fair.
Oh, they're
fair point.
Republic of Gamers, mate. They're like the originaters of, like,
you can get an ROG phone,
things.
Like, and it was great.
Really?
Yeah, the ROG phone was I had like the fan that you could attach to the back.
I had the ugly eye on the back, Pete.
So ridiculous.
You hate that eye. My power supply has the eye on it, and I was like, I'm so glad that's in the case. And if anyone ever saw my computer, they wouldn't be like, oh, you've got the ROG. Are you a gamer with a capital G gamer? Like, no, I just play video games.
The only OEM that's uglier is MSI. And I don't understand the, like, fucking Ferrari car bullshit that they put on all their stuff. It's so weird. Like, the MSI logo and all that stuff.
It's so funny how much the logo it does look like a car logo, and then like they also always have the like capital G gamer aesthetic stuff where it's like it's black and all the buttons are red and they're glowing and it's breathing.
I think I actually moved away from the dragon recently. I might have made.
That's a mistake. They should leave it. It's great.
Yeah, it really
no
is.
notes.
Yeah, I am currently sat in a like racing style chair, but I've never really fully understood the whole like it's black and red leather. It looks like a Formula One chair. It's like got all the sort of the speed lines on it and things like that. Like, also just think I don't know. Just I'm going off topic here, but like. You got to have your gamer juice. Got to have my gamer energy, my pre-gamer gamer workout, and put my gamer shoes on and put my gamer gloves on to sit at my gamer desk and game.
But by the way, if G Fuel want to sponsor us, I'll happily take the free energy drinks and the fridge. I'll put it in the bag. It'd be great.
There's a fridge. Yeah, do you know what? I've changed. Can I just shock you? I love G Fuel. I love G Fuel. Big Sneak guy as well. Love Sneak.
Listen, all the
gamers,
the gamers in the audience, we got to rise up against Max and Steve because they're fake gamer boys. They're just out here chilling.
Yeah. Lowercase G's, mate. I'm a lowercase G man myself. But...
I don't even know how we got here. Okay, so I'm gonna grab the controls and try to pull us out of this death spin. Thank you guys for joining us here at another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. If you want to write in with your thoughts on the ROG Ally 2 or Xbox Project Kennan, I'm interested in hearing from those of you who are longtime Steam Deck owners, those of you who are like more recent adopters, and then those of you that are in the audience that I know have another device like an Ally. Like, does this spec difference represent enough of a change for you to consider it? Are you, at all interested in seeing an evolution of like a Windows powered device that maybe has a more friendly OS? Or, are you kind of like us where it's like, largely like SteamOS is a huge part of the experience of Steam Deck. And I don't see jumping ship until there's really a viable alternative. And yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see if maybe the promise of higher specs and more games in your library is something that will sway anybody. Because at least Steve, deeply unconvinced by this guy. So we'll see. But of course,
and I liked Mad Cats back in the day.
Liked Mad Cats.
I had the GameCube controller with the turbo button.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
And you cheated in Mario Kart?
I did in Mario
Party.
Yeah, and my family found out and they weren't very happy with me, and I wasn't allowed to use that controller anymore.
That makes sense.
It was brilliant.
It makes perfect sense that the Mad Cats like controller was always like the give it to the guest one, and these Mad Cats looking ass consoles look like your like youngest cousin has just smeared his greasy fingers all over it.
This kid just filled with Halloween candy on his sticky ass fingers.
He's wiped his nose and immediately started touching the buns.
Gross. Of course, if you want to answer those questions, you want to check out our sister shows, the Nintendo Noise Podcast or the Flip Screen Games Podcast, or if you want to, write in, you want to join the community, you want to go and support us on Patreon and get a bunch of cool perks and goodies and exclusive content, you can do all that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. And of course, I'd like to extend a very special thank you to our Patreon producers for the month of May. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobi, Project Julian, Steve Stompy, Susan Still Likes Cats and also Boobies, Voodoo Vic, That One Kid Nick, Ty the Dude, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Gang, thanks for joining us. For the crew, I've been Pete, he's been Steve, he's been Max. We'll see you next week.